Yeah. Please test करें सर please. Yeah. That's good.
Hello.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. Leave it.
Muhammad wale Muhammad salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على النبي الأمي أبي القاسم محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد
وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتابه المجيد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أم يحسدون الناس على ما آتاهم الله من فضله فقد آتينا آل إبراهيم الكتاب والحكمة وآتيناهم ملكا عظيما صلوات
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد.
Muharram 1435 Hijrah, the first day of Muharram, 5th of November 2013. We are in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I personally am grateful to you all, first for inviting me to address you for these 10-12 days of Muharram and hosting me and making this place welcome and comfortable for me. Salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
This is an introductory presentation from me to you today. I would briefly go over the various aspects of this presentation that will come to you in the next 10 days and try to prepare for what I am going to present to you. When the brother came to receive me at the airport today, on the way we started talking, and he asked me, have you prepared something for these 10 days for us? And I said, yes, of course. If I hadn't prepared something, it would be really my absolute pain. Because I know that you are taking this time from this daily schedule of your life. Of course, you are doing it for the passion of Karbala and for the passion of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. But of course, you are paying attention to me. And I am the instrument in this instance to present something to you. And if I hadn't really prepared something, it would really be sad on my part. I would have really failed in my duty to present the message of Taliban to you. So I have big plans for you. And I'm debating within myself whether I will be able to present all that I have prepared. I prepared a lot. And I will have to see how much I can give you. And from that point of view, I ask you all to consider two things. You're coming here, you're giving this time to this place. It is incumbent upon you to make the best use of this time. And it is also my duty to make this as successful as possible and give you as much information and material to reflect for the rest of the year until the next Muharram when this will be repeated. So I have a duty and you have a duty. And we can only make this thing successful if we cooperate with each other. I have a presentation and you are here to receive it. Inshallah, I look forward to your receiving my message. And I'm sure you are looking forward to receiving my message. Salawat. So I have chosen this verse from Surah Nisa. As you know, Surah Nisa is chapter 4 of the Quran. And this is verse number 54. And you will hear this verse from me every day from now on, from the member. And I would like all of you, particularly the young listeners, to memorize this verse. Because this is a very, very profound verse. Every verse of the Quran is profound. But why have I chosen this particular verse? That is a part of my introductory speech. Every verse of the Quran has two aspects. The meaning which were put in this verse because there was a cause for the revelation. Allah decided to send this particular verse for a particular reason. That was the immediate cause of the revelation of the verse, and that is called Asbab-e-Nuzul, the reason and occasion of revelation. And this is a whole science. Quranic sciences are vast, and there are various elements in the Quranic sciences, and one of the elements is Asbab-e-Nuzul. It's a science on its own. The reason and occasion of revelation. Why was this verse revealed? Where was it revealed? Who was around when the Prophet recited this verse? What was the cause of the revelation? What was the effect? That is one aspect of the Quranic verse. Second aspect is, after the Prophet had gone from this world, times have changed, times have passed, 1400 years have passed, and we have to see how this verse reflects on the life of the community, Muslim community, and for the whole world in those intervening years. So those are the two elements. Why was it revealed? What is the meaning? And then, how has this ayat reflected upon the times after the Prophet? Salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
So when we consider a verse of the Quran and trying to understand it, there are various ways to look at a verse. Generally, you take a word-to-word translation and then try to explain. The other very profound method is that you look at each word in the verse. Of course, there are some words like is, was, but, because, these are connecting words. What you look in the verse of the Quran is the key words. The key words which actually give it profound meaning. So we see that there are three key words in this verse. What are those? First word is kitab, hikmat, and mulk-e-azim. Kitab we understand is generally treated as Quran. Kitab is Quran. But then kitab has other meanings. Kitab is also Islamic law. Hikmat we all know, wisdom. Mulk-e-azim is a very, very deep meaning construct. Great kingdom. What does great kingdom mean? And this is what we will discuss in the coming days. But then there is a very, very significant word. Am yahseduna nasa. Are they going to be jealous of men because Allah has given them from His bounties, His blessings? فَقَدْ آتَيْنَا عَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ وَآتَيْنَاهُمْ مُلْكًا عَظِيمًا. Indeed, we have bestowed on the children of Ibrahim Kitab, Hikmat, and Mulk-e-azim. And we will take time on the coming days in explaining what is Kitab, what is Hikmat, what is Mulk-e-azim. But the important thing is to understand is the beginning word. Am yahsaduna nasa. Are they going to be jealous of people? Why has Quran used the word jealousy? What is hasad? And this will explain to us the causes of Karbala. In fact, the causes how Islamic history has evolved from the time of the Prophet to today. Why has Quran placed so much emphasis on hasad, jealousy? And what does it mean? And why Quran is presenting it as a key word in this verse? Salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
One of the main aspects of my presentation, inshallah, will be how we, this community, or any other community in the country, or anywhere else in the world today, can reflect on Karbala and see how Karbala reflects on our life today. How is Karbala relevant to us today, in this world, wherever we live in the world, at this time? And of course, it becomes much more significant to the growing generation, the children, the 12-year-old, the 17-year-old, the 14-year-old, the young ladies who have to grow up, get married, and become mothers. And they have to raise a new generation. It's so much more significant for them. What are the forces working on us against our both forces? We live in a country where religion has been separated from the social government system. And the government claims that we don't want to interfere in any citizen's religious beliefs and practices. And the system will provide as much as it can, given the resources in the country, to facilitate the practice of the religion of a person who is a citizen of this country. We all know that. That's in the Constitution. That religion has been separated from the government, and the government is duty bound to provide certain amount of freedom, and both personal and group freedom, to a group of people who want to practice a certain religion in the way they want, as long as it does not cause any problems to the larger community. And you are aware, in the last years, the Ground Zero Mosque had a big controversy in New York. And there were these two forces conflicting with each other. Government's duty to provide a facility to a group of people to practice their religion, the right of a group of people to have a place of worship in the area where they live, and the rights of the larger community, non-Muslim larger community, who felt that if this place of worship is established here in New York, namely, or at Ground Zero, it will cause more hurt to the community than good. Those were the forces working. And I urge you all, particularly the students who are still in college or school, or anybody else, to reflect on this event that happened a few years ago and how it was resolved. It's very important for you to study it and see who are the people who are opposing the establishment of the mosque at Ground Zero. It's actually not at Ground Zero. It's a couple of miles away, if you have been to New York and seen it. The address is Park 51, and it's called Park 51. And one of the things that happened in that struggle, that the mayor of the town, New York town, was for the mosque. But there was a larger group of residents in the area that were against the mosque. And in the middle of all this is the small group, the businessman who owns the property, and a group of people who wanted the mosque established. And finally it was resolved that the mosque will go there. The place has been reserved for a mosque. The funding is being asked for. And in addition to the mosque, I came across with a group of young men and women who actually established a Mora Majlis program in Park 15. And that has been going on for the last 4 years. And I am proud to say that the first Majlis that happened at Park 15, I was asked to address that Majlis. Salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad.
I got involved in the whole thing, and that is why I brought it to your attention. And there is another aspect which we will discuss in the coming days, inshallah. But the point is, I'm trying to make is, I am going to spend sufficient time, from my point of view, to give you feedback as well as some material to reflect upon and use it in your daily life, wherever you are. Beginning Muharram, I have been in the country for 30 years, or more than that. And I am very active on the internet. I write in like 50, 60 forums, and every forum has up to 2,000 members. So you can imagine the publicity that my messages get. And 3 or 4, maybe 5 groups are managed by Shias. And the others are political and Sunni dominated. And I have watched every year, as soon as Muharram comes, the first of Muharram, even before, 29th of Zulhijjah, 28th of Zulhijjah, I get a flood of messages in those forums. There is a large group which want to say this is all wrong, Muharram is the first month of the Islamic year, we should celebrate it, and this miserable practice of crying and weeping and beating your chest is all giving a bad name to Muslim community as a whole. That's that group, and it's a very vocal group. And there are a large number of these people who write these messages. And the blessing of the fasting of the day of Ashura, and then we are there to give the correct aspect of Muharram. Why is Muharram celebrated or commemorated the way it is? That we sit down and have this majlis, have speeches, we do Nawa, we do Matam, we decorate the alam, we give tabarruk, we take a julus in certain cities, out in the streets, and we pay attention to the education of the community. And then there is, in the middle of all this, there is a larger group which is quietly indifferent from the whole thing. They don't care what is going on. Muslims, we are talking about Muslims, not the non-Muslim crowd. So these are three groups in the Muslim community, and I'm talking about the larger world Muslim community, not just North Carolina or New York or United States, the world community. Because now internet has made this world so small that you feel close to everyone, whether he lives in Sweden or India or Singapore or New York or North Carolina. You don't care because the message is there. Somebody writes a message today, you get it in 3 minutes. So you all feel like a larger community, Muslim community. So now, our children who are growing up, who go to college, so much, not so much in school, but college. Every college has an MSA, Muslim Students Association. For the last 30 years, MSAs have been dominated by the Saudi-funded way of thinking. Some of the MSAs actually get money. So obviously, if they are getting paid from somewhere, they will propagate that point of view. And their main aim is to subdue this local community who commemorates Muharram actively. And put them on the defensive. This is all wrong what you're doing. Why are you doing it? It's not mentioned in the Quran. It's not in the Hadith. It happened 50 years after the passing away of the Prophet. Not relevant to Islam. That reflects in the way it is being propagated here in the larger Muslim community geographically. So there are countries which are totally, or at least 99% lovers of Ahlul Bayt, followers of Ahlul Bayt, like Iran, like Bahrain. And Muharram is totally commemorated there. There is no problem there. Then there are those countries where Imam Hussain, Karbala are not mentioned, not heard of. Even if there are some very, very important relics found in that country relating to Karbala and Imam Hussain. For example, Egypt. You will, if you go and live in Egypt, in any residential neighborhood, you will not hear Imam Hussain or Karbala in any manner, any time of the year. They're all Muslims. In the middle of Cairo, there are two very important buildings. One is Masjid Rasul Hussain. And the legend is that there is a mosque and Imam Hussein's head is buried in that mosque. And the second very important relic in the center of Cairo is Janab Zainab's mausoleum. Everyone knows that Imam Hussein's sister is buried here. Now, I don't discuss with you things which are talked about or heard at a lower level at people generally on the streets. I want want to bring to you academic significance, academic evidence. There is a person, or there was a professor of law in the University of Cairo. His name was Muhammad Abu Zara. He have written 5 very important books, and in the 5 books, he has given the biography of 5 great lawgivers of Islam. There are 5 important fiqh in Islam. You all know that. Jafri, which we follow, Hanafi, Shafi, Hanbali, and Maliki. So Muhammad Abu Zara had written 5 books, and he has produced in those 5 books the 5 biographies of those 5 imams. Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, Jafri fiqh, Imam Abu Hanifa, Hanafi fiqh, Imam Shafi, Imam Malik, and Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. Those are 5 very profound biographies. This man obviously was a Sunni, but he's interested in all aspects of Islam, including fiqh Jafri. So he's a very honest writer. And of course he had children, several children. One of his daughters lives in England, in Oxford. Her name is Nadia Abu Zara. She returned after several years to Egypt, her hometown, and she is a PhD in anthropology, very learned woman. So she decided to do field work at the mausoleum of Janab Zainab. So she went, and for 3 weeks she would spend all day sitting at the mausoleum, watching the people who are coming to visit for the ziyarat of Janab Zainab. And she explored various questions. One of the questions she asked of one of the visitors who had come from far off countryside, not main Cairo, you know there is a mausoleum in Damascus too. And those people say that that is where Janab Zainab is buried. So how can you say that Janab Zainab is buried here? And he says, no, that is the Zainab the younger who is buried in Damascus. That's Janab Kulthum, the younger sisters. That is the belief of the Egyptians who come to visit that mausoleum. In spite of that presence, the general public, the college, the university does not speak about Karbala or Imam Hussain. So that's another aspect of a Muslim community. In spite of having 2 very significant relics at their doorstep, they have kept aloof from Karbala and Imam Hussain. Why is that? This is for you to reflect. And then we have countries like India, Pakistan, Iraq, where communities are mixed. Shias and Sunnis live side by side, and Karbala is commemorated openly. Of course, Karbala is in Iraq itself, so that is the greatest center of gravitation for the lovers of Imam Hussain, for the lovers of Karbala. So these are the 3 types of countries where Muslims live, and these are the 3 behaviors we find in these countries. That is reflected in any Muslim community anywhere in the world, like Muslims living in the United States. And you will find those 3 lines of thinking here in America too. Except that here we intermingle everything. When our children go to university, they may find another student belonging to this side or that side or in the middle. And the students are bound to interact more than grown-ups. So we have to prepare our children to have all the knowledge so that they can have an intelligent dialogue. Not fight, not argue, but have an intelligent dialogue about our ideology, about why Karbala happened, who was Imam Hussain, and what is the importance of Imam Hussain in our life. Salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
So my presentation will be switching back and forth along these 3 lines. And of course I have a preparation for every day, but I will be switching back and forth, as I said, on those 3 lines, inshallah. And of course, the end of the majlis when we recite Messiah, in which we tell one story every night from Karbala itself. Salawat.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
The question is, how are we going to present our devotion to Imam Hussain and Karbala to those who do not subscribe to our way of thinking? This is the question. And how best to do it. If we are asked a question, why are you doing this? Why are you wearing a black shirt today? Why didn't you come to work? Suppose it was Ashura and you didn't go to work. And your colleague asked you, why didn't you come to work yesterday? How are you going to respond? Or school. You didn't go to school on Ashura. And your best friend in class asked you, why didn't you come yesterday? We had a fun game here. We have a special band playing here. And we missed you. How are you going to respond? This is where you have to concentrate. In addition to what you're trying to do, whether you're learning mathematics or physics or chemistry or whatever, or you are a technologist or you are a lawyer, you have to have this alongside your mainline life. And that is why we meet every year for these 10 days and try to spend this time together to bring you the information. The important part for the younger generation is, for me, or people like me, is to impart the passion to the growing generations. Without passion, our religion is blank. And as you will hear from me in the coming days, I will bring this passion from time to time. How the passion reflected itself in the life of the Prophet, in the life of the Imams, and how Karbala happened, and what is the main ingredient of Karbala. Salawat.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
So let's start from the very beginning, when the Prophet of Islam announced his mission. He was 40 years old, and he kept quiet for 40 years of his life. He spent the time in impressing on the society where he was growing up that he was the best man, who had all the akhlaq, all the ethics, all the principles as compared to the rest of people. And he stood out in that community as the most truthful, the most trustworthy, the most honest, reliable person in the community. And suddenly, one day, he goes up to this hill in the city and he calls every tribe by name. You so-and-so, you so-and-so, and a big crowd gathers around him. And he says, if I told you that behind this hill there is an army ready to attack the city, would you believe it? And they all said, yes. You have always been truthful in your life. You have never said a single lie. You are most trustworthy. Of course we will believe you. And suddenly the Prophet says, I tell you that all these stone idols that you have kept inside the Khaneh, they are all false, meaningless. There is only one God whom you cannot see, but He controls the world. He is the creator. He is the maintainer. And in His control is everything in this world. And He controls your life, and He will control your death. Now, death is something that nobody can deny, whether he's a Muslim or Christian or no religion, because it's experience. You cannot deny death. And that was the deciding point. That told the Arab Bedouin who roamed the desert and herded the sheep that this man has some truth about him, because death cannot be denied. And then the Prophet added that Allah has sent you with this life in this world for a trial. This life is a trial. And you will be brought back to Allah's presence, and Allah will ask you, what have you been doing in this life? And then there is reward, and then there is punishment. That was the system the Prophet presented. And of course the majority rejected it. He preached for 13 years in Makkah. What did he get? First, indifference, then ridicule, and then rocks thrown at him. And finally, he was threatened with his life and he had to leave town. But remember this sequence. He is in the town where he was born. The entire population of the city had seen him growing up, spending 40 years of his life proving to them that he is the best possible human being. He is truthful, he is honest, he is trustworthy. And when he says something new to them, he is denied. He is denied. Majority of them say, no, we don't believe you. You're destroying our forefathers' culture and religion. We don't believe you. So if you look at it, the Prophet had failed in his own town with the people he had grown up, his own family, his own friends, his neighbors. And suddenly, he gets a message from a neighboring town, which is 300 miles away. And there are two large tribes living there. And their representatives come and says, Ya Rasulullah, we want you to come and become our leader, our judge, and our teacher. Because we think you are the right person who would come and resolve all our problems. And the problems were that there were two major tribes and they had been fighting for 40 years. And there were killings after killings, and they would not stop fighting. So all their production had gone down. They were farmers, orchard owners, and some of them businessmen. And because there was so much killing in the community, look at what is happening in Pakistan today. There's so much killing that a person leaves the house in the morning and his family members and he himself do not know whether this man is going to return in whole body back at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. Nobody knows. So that is the uncertainty of extensive violence in Indian society. And we are talking about 1400 years ago, when most of it was rural country. There was no organized police station, judges, courts, nothing of the kind. And those of you who have relatives living in Karachi, for example, today know exactly how the people of Karachi feel today. How uncertain, and because of being uncertain, how unproductive the whole society has become. So the people felt that they are becoming unproductive and they want peace and coexistence. And therefore they need a leader, a selfless leader who is knowledgeable, wise, and can bring peace in the town. So they approached the Prophet of Islam and said, you come and become our teacher, our judge, and our leader. The Prophet comes. And people welcome him. But when he meets the larger community of Medina, he does not say that, okay, I accept your offer. He puts a condition. The condition is, I am Rasulullah. I am a prophet of Allah. I do only what I receive as command from Allah. And that's the only thing I am bound by. If you accept me as Rasulullah, only then I will come to your town. And the whole community of Medina accepted that yes, you are Rasulullah. So every time when Rasulullah would stand up and say, this is the revelation I have received today, nobody would counter it. Good, because they had made a commitment. They believed. Now I ask you a question. Do you think every member of the Medinan community had overnight created a belief in his heart, yes, this is Rasulullah, and Jibreel comes to him, and whatever he recites, Allah's statements, and therefore we can know. Do you think everyone accepted this faith overnight equally?
No.
No. Cannot happen. Every human being has a different temperament, a different idea of life. When they saw that the majority have accepted Rasulullah as Rasulullah, they said, yes, we also accept. In the interest of the Prophet. So at the very outset, there were three different thinkings in the Medinan community. One, who really truly accepted the Rasulullah as Rasulullah. And they had firm belief, and they died with that belief. And we will show evidence that this is what happened. Then there was those people who were in the middle, that they had some doubts, but they said, let's try it. Let's try it. After all, he's going to bring good to us. So let's try it. And there was the third group who definitely knew that this not going to be accepted. But let's go along. Let's go along. These are the three different thinking levels. You know, we have been talking about three different aspects from the beginning. Remember, these three things always go along. Everywhere. And that is how I'm going to present my presentation in three different aspects. Inshallah. Now, the Muslim community that was established by the Prophet of Islam in Medina remained under the leadership of the Prophet of Islam for 11 years. And in those 11 years, the community went through a lot of ups and downs. And at every step, there was a trial for the community. They were tested. And not everyone behaved exactly in the same way. And those three different feelings and ideas manifested themselves. And everybody knew. And those three things are recorded in the Quran, verse by verse. If you read the Quran intently, you will find those three lines of thinking in the Quran. These are the firm believers. Never budge in following what the Prophet said, what Allah wanted. These are the people in the middle, and these are the hypocrites who were coming along, but in the heart of their hearts, they had not accepted the message. So you will see this all along. What did Karbala do? This is my conclusion of 10 days, but I am giving it to you now. We will elaborate upon it. What did Karbala do? Karbala separated those three lines of thinking very clearly, and Karbala established those three things for us to study for all time to come. For those 1400 years which have passed, those three lines of thinking have been coming along. Some of us are perceptive enough to see those three lines, others are not. Those of us who see those three lines, it is incumbent upon us to manifest those every time we find an opportunity or we see a need to do it. That is the purpose of this whole thing, commemoration. If we don't do that, we are not fulfilling our duty as human beings, as good Muslims, as servants of Allah. Salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad.
So there are these three lines, and they show these three different thinking processes in various events. What was the first event? The Prophet of Islam, when he gave his mission to Makkah, he was failed by the Makkahs. He had to leave town. Remember these events. He had to leave town, and a neighboring town welcomed him. And that's where he was able to establish a city-state. What does a city-state mean? He had a government. There was a head of government. There was a board of advisors and the larger public. And there was a law being given. The law has been recorded for us in the Quran and some parts in Hadith. That's the document. That's the constitution of that state. Now here, some people who were in the middle, they realized that if the city government had not been established, the mission of Islam and the Prophet of Islam would have failed completely. That was their thinking. So they thought that government, temporal power, is a necessity for Islam. I want this point to really be received well and understood. There is a group of Muslims, fairly large. They feel that because the Prophet was able to establish a city government, holding temporal power is a part of Islamic mission. Without temporal power, Islam would not have survived. And there was those hardline believers, who had accepted the Prophet as Rasulullah without any doubts, without any compulsion. They knew that Islam is Islam. Islam will remain because Islam is a mission. The mission will go on. Whether there is a government or not, Islam will continue. Try to understand this difference. And those hypocrites, what did they do? They thought, oh, this is a very interesting phenomenon. We have now established government. Let's maneuver ourselves to take over this government. You have seen this takeovers in America every day. When a corporation becomes very successful, suddenly the stock goes up 100 times or 1,000 times. Bigger corporations will come and try to take it over to make a larger profit. Natural phenomenon, greed. This is what happened with the third group. They tried and succeeded in controlling the government of the time. So ideology that conflicted was whether Islam is spiritual power or worldly power. Whether, of course, the government, the Islamic mission has two aspects, the spiritual force and the worldly power. Whether the spiritual power overrides the worldly government or the worldly government overrides the spiritual power. That was the question. And that question has been going on for the 1400 years. Why am I saying this? I am going to explain Mulkan Azim. What does Mulk Azim mean? The great kingdom. Now if you read established Sunni Tafsir and go to this verse, 454 that I have recited, they have explained Mulk Azim as the worldly power that has been received by the Muslim communities across the centuries because of their obedience to Allah is the Mulk Azim. But if you go to the Tafsir of Al-Bayt, Mulk Azim is something else. And I will bring the meaning of Mulk Azim from the Quran itself. See, the best way to describe a key word in a Quranic verse is to find the meaning of that word in some other ayah, where it is described by some other context more clearly. So I will bring the meaning of Mulk Azim from another Quranic verse, inshallah. Maybe tomorrow, maybe 3 days later. Our intention is Mulk Azim is not worldly power. And that is what Karbala proves. Now you remember the event. Karbala has happened. People have been killed. All men have been killed, including children, 13-year-olds. The rest, women, and our fourth Imam, Imam Zainul Abidin, has been taken prisoner. And the caravan is doing a trek all the way from Karbala to Damascus, 1500 miles. And the fourth Imam is tied in chains with a yoke around his neck on a camel. And the caravan, because of the traffic rush, stopped for a while. People are lining up on both sides of the city. This is the kingdom, this is the capital of the kingdom of Islam. 61 Hijrah, Muharram. And suddenly people are looking and discussing, and an old man approaches the fourth Imam. And he looks up and he says, I thank God who killed you, humiliated you, and made prisoners of you. And the fourth Imam looks down on this old Imam. Now, imagine the crowd. There is a caravan passing through the city streets. People are gathered. There's a lot of rush. And the fourth Imam, in this rush, composes himself and asks the old man, have you read the Quran? And the old man says, of course, I read the Quran every day. And then the fourth Imam says, have you read this verse? Of course I have read. But what is that got to do with you? And the fourth Imam says, we are the Quran. We are the Quran. It is our love that has been made incumbent on every Muslim. And the old man is stressed. Who are you? we are the progeny of your prophet. Oh, but we have been told that the prophet died childless. This is what is going on in the Umayyad community, in the city. The prophet died childless. Can you imagine that? Only 50 years have passed since the prophet passed away. And now the general knowledge of the community is that the prophet died childless. And the fourth Imam goes on and he says, have you not heard this hadith? A person who dies in the love of Ahlul Bayt goes to them like a new bride arrives at her new home. But what has that got to do with you? Ahlul Bayt are the children of Muawiyah, the Banu Umayyah who were ruling the country. These are Ahlul Bayt. This is the extent of propaganda that has been fed to the public for 50 years, at least 40 years. And the public believes it. So don't be surprised if you find a Muslim today who doesn't want to talk about Karbala, who doesn't want to acknowledge Imam Hussain as a great leader, as a great martyr. Do not be surprised. 1400 years have passed. This is only 50 years ago. And the fourth Imam has to reveal the whole history of those 50 years to this old man to tell him the truth. So that gives you the answer that how come that 50 years ago the Prophet had established a great kingdom here in Medina. What had happened to that kingdom? Was it only a geographical kingdom or something else? And that will bring to you the meaning of Mulk-e-Azim. The fourth Imam, the caravan passes. And the caravan is presented. All the prisoners are presented to Yazid. And Yazid is very proud at his victory. And he repeats the same thing that the old man on the street said. I am so pleased that I have taken the revenge of the battle of Uhud and Badr. And I wish my elders were alive today and see how we have taken revenge for our defeat at Badr and Uhud. What does that tell you? Yazid is taking pride on his empire. In his opinion, this is the Mulk-e-Azim. The holding this entire Islamic empire as the Khalifa and controlling all the kingdom and defeating a family and a person who had stood up to him on basic principles. That is his concept of Mulk-e-Azim. Why is this happening? I go back to the word of Asad in the beginning of the verse. When the Prophet announced his mission and he was successfully being followed, even in Makkah, the prime force that opposed him was the Banu Umayyah. And they were heard saying, what is it that this orphan of Banu Hashim receives the angel in his house, which is only a hut? Why doesn't the angel come to my palace? Look at my palace. I have these carpets and these curtains and these servants, ghulam and kanis, and I have this pomp and circumstance. Why doesn't the angel of Allah come to my palace and talks to me? What is this? This is Hassan. You have so much, and the other guy has very little, and he has something very little that you covet, and suddenly you become engrossed in Hassan. Why don't I have that which he has? In spite of all this that I have, this is Hassan. And I'm explaining this for the younger generation. This is Hassan. Be grateful to Allah for what you have. Do not covet what the other guy has. Pray to Allah if you want more. Allah will accept your prayers. But do not covet what you don't have and the other guy has. You don't know what good you have, in spite of the fact that he has something else. That constitutes Hassan. And if you are followers of Imam Hussain, and if you commemorate Karbala with that spirit, you will never do Hassan. That's the teaching you are getting from this place today, inshallah. So I pray that you get the message of Karbala, the passion of Karbala, And may Allah give you the courage and the strength to transfer this passion and this knowledge and this feeling to your children successfully, so that they can continue this legacy in their children, because you don't know how many generations we are going to live in this country. We came to India in 900s, and we stayed in India until today. And look at the number of Muslims in India, subcontinent, and the way they have made their presence known. They have done so much for the country. They have produced, and they have enlarged the culture of the country. And Karbala has made a very significant part in that enhancement of culture. And I hope, inshallah, and I pray that you will do the same in this country, in the coming generations. May Allah give you the good sense, the courage and the strength to understand the teachings of Allah and pass that teaching to your children, inshallah. Wa alaikum assalam.